Welcome to this week's episode of Future Fridays, where we chat about future tech headlines from the week. I'm your host, Wiz, and you can find me on Twitter at WizLikeWizard. Today, we have three lovely guests who will go around and each give a 280-character intro. And we also have Yael, who is a cartoonist who'll be doodling with us for fun. And you can find her on Instagram at Yaelisms. So Shahin, we'll start with you, just a short 280-character intro.
Sure, I'm a huge science fiction geek, and I grew up loving cars and computers and space. And I joined Lux 13 years ago, leading our investments in rockets, satellites, driverless cars, and AI.
Nice. Victor?
Yes, I'm Victor, and I'm also a massive sci-fi geek. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Synthesia. We build synthetic media tools, and our big vision is to create video, but without using any cameras. And our big sort of idea is we want to enable a YouTube creator to create a Hollywood film in the next 10 years.
That's awesome. Andrew?
Yeah, so I'm Joe Scott, based out of London at the moment. Started back in '98 with my first startup. Did 6 startups, sold 1, 4 failed, 1 still running without me. And about 6 years ago, switched onto the investment side. And big lover of movies. I'm writing a film script, so I'm in good company.
Classic entrepreneur journey as well.
Right.
Great, guys. Before we jump in, just wanted to say for everyone watching today that all the headlines that we're going to talk about today came from a newsletter I work on called This Week in Creative Tech. And you can sign up at bit.ly/join Future Fridays. So we're going to start off with a game just to get things going. There's going to be a prize at the end as well. We're going to be keeping score. So this round is going to be worth 5 points. I've got 3 headlines here, 2 of which are real and 1 of which is fake. I'm going to read all 3 out. And then at the end, we're going to do rock, paper, scissors style for you guys to show which one you think the fake headline is. So first headline here is, this neural network was fed 10,000 dicks to learn how to draw one. Second headline is, scientists deafened after trying to repel murder hornets with sonic waves. And final headline, researchers say large faces in video meetings can trigger a fight or flight response. So we'll do rock, paper, scissors, shoot. And on shoot, just put 1, 2, or 3 up and hold it up, and then we'll record who gets 5 points for this round. So hands up for the ready. All right, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Shahin, is that a 2?
Yes.
Awesome. So the correct answer is in fact 2. The fake headline here is, scientists deafened after trying to repel murder hornets with sonic waves. So that's 5 points for Shahin and 5 points for Victor. So with that, we'll move on to the first headline today, which is, Within introduced Supernatural, an in-home VR fitness experience. So I actually played this morning and it was super fun. Basically, this is meant to be one of the first membership-based VR fitness training. There's a lot of games in VR today that have fitness properties. And there's a couple of fitness apps as well, like Box VR, which Boost is an investor in. We've had Adam on previously. But this is meant to be the first membership-based one. So it's made only for Quest, which allows for the wireless nature of it, which is nice. And what's cool about it is, similar to Beat Saber, you get a lot of the fun movements, but they've partnered with big music brands to get some of the latest music online. And instead of being in sort of a digital room like something like Beat Saber, you're actually immersed in these like beautiful immersive landscapes from all over the world. It's quite nice. I did a workout and it was like 3 separate songs and 3 different landscapes. So question to you guys today to kick things off. I mean, I've seen a large new crop of these sort of home gym 2.0s that have emerged, things like Peloton, which most are familiar with, Mirror, Tonal. There's a rowing machine I've seen and some VR ones. Is this the future of working out? What will physical gyms of the future look like?
Let's jump in.
Happy to go first.
Shoot.
Go ahead. Absolutely. I do know all of you. Go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, there's already there's the start of this. There's already a gym in San Francisco, right? I think called Black Box, which offers a sort of full VR workout you can do. So I think this is probably part of the future. It's less for me about the gamification and the concept in itself, and it's more about the same problems we have in general with VR at the moment, which is to do with the, the clunkiness of the hardware, the barrier to entry of being able to use it. But I showed this to my better half actually, and she said straight away, absolutely, I would use that, but she doesn't have a headset. So
yeah, I think I'd mirror that. Like I actually worked in VR like a year before I started Synthesia, and I think it's absolutely going to be the case. But I think timing is of the essence here, and I don't think we're going to see these pick up mainstream before the devices is miniaturized, right? Even at conferences today, you have a lot of people who don't even want to put on the headsets because you get very sweaty very fast. And I think I don't believe so much in that right now. I believe a lot in mental training, which is not physical. I think we're going to touch upon that a little bit later on. Some of the things I've seen have been involved in, of rewiring your brain and everything from anxiety to OCD and those kind of things, making your brain think differently, which to me is also a kind of working out, even if not physical. I think we'll see that being much more prominent over the next 5 years.
A lot of the successful consumer products that we've seen, especially those in the exercise realm and wellness realm, have been those that have come about with very minimal changes to human behavior. And so to the points that Andrew and Victor made around it being small enough, it being easy to share, it being cheap enough, I think eventually we'll get there so that someone would do a workout that they otherwise would have done already, but would be significantly enhanced with the VR experience. If you look at Peloton right now, it's been hugely successful because people were already cycling, and you're adding this layer of social and gamification and an overall richer experience on something that people know and understand and are accustomed to already. And I expect VR, when these advances are made, to eventually get there, but we may not quite be there today.
Yeah, speaking of Peloton, I mean, there's also just the removing of the friction of walking to the gym, right? Or driving to the gym for those that live further away. Forgetting VR for a second and thinking just of these new home gym 2.0s, will we see more and more people move to them? I mean, obviously we're in a ripe time right now with everyone already at home. Is this just an acceleration of that trend? And does that impact gyms going forward? Are they going to have to do different things with the spaces?
I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. So Peloton is actually one of our clients, and we do a lot of work with them, and we're going to come up with some very, very exciting stuff very soon. I think what they can offer these kind of things is a different training experience to being in the gym. I think what we've seen so far is a lot of trying to emulate what happens in the gym. But I think we're going to see a whole new wave of these kind of applications, which are going to be much more personalized and have more kind of a one-to-one trainer aspect built into them. So I don't think they are substitutes for each other. I think they can substitute each other, but I think they really just enable an entirely new form of experience. I think, that taps into also the things we're going to be talking about later with Fortnite and all this sort of way of being social online.
I agree with that, with Victor. I mean, I think it's going to grow the market, especially initially. Already, again, speaking just about my other half, previously she'd have gone to the gym. Her trainer has converted to a whole range of different group classes via Zoom. And that's something that they're already talking about continuing even after COVID, to hopefully finally goes away. So I expect ultimately it to pull in more people and increase the size of the overall market.
Victor, I liked your thought.
I personally was go ahead, Wick.
No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say that I was not a believer in home fitness until this whole COVID crisis. And I think the COVID crisis helped those that are trying to create alternatives to the gym experience by allowing folks to at least attempt maintaining a workout routine in the home. And now folks know that they don't have to schlep to a gym. They don't have to pay those huge gym memberships. They don't have to pay for those classes to get a reasonable experience. And to Victor's point, if you create new experiences on the at-home gym platforms, it would greatly diminish the value of a gym membership and the effort of having to go to a gym.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love Victor's point of the new experiences. Playing Supernatural this morning, I mean, that's what was exciting about it, is it wasn't, the Pamela Reif 20-minute YouTube video where you're doing crunches and push-ups. You were playing like Beat Saber with like a fun song. We'll move on. We've got a cartoon for this section. Cartoonist, what do you have for us?
Let me unmute. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Welcome to my life.
Here's
How about
one. I made a few variations of that same drawing. So. Another thought. We got more here.
You can be anyone as an avatar.
I thought you were going to have, do I look fat in this?
Here's another one. If people can really calibrate what they want, I have a feeling some people would want this. And last one I did was this one.
It's also interesting to notice that your choice of instructors virtually, the criteria is very different from instructors that you'd like to have in person. I personally, I would prefer an instructor who speaks less in person because I tend to get confused. But then I like to have an instructor who speaks more and is more engaging online because that helps me get more engaged. And so I guess the criteria is very different for virtual versus physical instructors.
Totally. Great, we'll move on to the next headline. So next headline here is LSD off switch developed by Psychedelic Pharmaceutical Company. So this one's pretty interesting. Obviously, there's been a surge of alternative medicines, psychedelic medicines. Part of the problem with LSD as compared to some other treatments is that the effects can last 8 to 12 hours. So if you're looking for a targeted therapeutical session, an hour or so, much harder when you're tripping for 8 to 12 hours. What this article is about is that this pharmaceutical company has developed basically a way to turn it off. So take acid, get the effects, but we're able to cut it off in a short amount of time, either to keep the session short, or if someone starts to have a bad trip, being able to move beyond that as well. So kicking it off, question to you all. I have been seeing a lot of these new psychedelic health companies cropping up, magic mushrooms, ketamine, ayahuasca, all kinds of things. How far are we from large-scale adoption of these, or will we even ever reach that? I mean, we saw all kinds of regulatory hurdles with medicinal marijuana, which now seems, in a funny way, benign almost. Where are we going to be with the world of these crazy psychedelic drugs?
So there's two questions in there. One, putting my investor hat on, will these be successful for investors? Will they make money for investors? And then the second question is, would you consider consuming these? For the past month and a half or 2 months, since we've been kind of sheltered in place here, I have completely cut my consumption of caffeine and alcohol to zero. So I may not be the typical customer here, and I would probably never use stuff like this. But from an investor perspective, I think a lot of this goes back to branding and marketing. And so I think that if this stuff is marketed properly, and targeted at the right audience, at the right market, then I think it could become successful. But that's a universe that's a lot different from what I typically do day to day.
I mean, I think this is a classic case of the consumer and customer being way ahead of the politicians and the frameworks and the legality. I mean, some of this stuff, if you go back, LSD has obviously been around since the 40s, and if you go back to the 50s and 60s, there was actually an LSD brand that was used medicinally. That was a medical brand. And then I think the IP ran out in the end of the 60s, but then, of course, the US and the UN, I think, made it illegal as a controlled substance. So we're only just at the beginning of the research actually being even allowed again. Certainly in many Western countries, I don't know about others, but only in the last few years have these companies even been allowed to apply for licenses to do research on the benefits for mental health or other things. And prior to that, any research even done in labs and universities funding could often only be granted if they were going to prove that these things were bad for you, which is not a great place to start doing scientific objective research. So I think we will see more and more of these. I think even with the cannabis and CBD, we're at the very, very, very beginning of the curve because there's lots of challenges around, strength and controlling the strength, which is ultimately what causes mental health problems for many people. It's not the substance itself. It's just the fact that, you know, a spliff these days is 50 times stronger than it was in Woodstock, right? So yeah, I think we're going to see a huge amount more, but I think it's going to take way, way longer for governments and you know, essentially the war on drugs to catch up, and then we're probably talking decades.
Yeah, I totally echo that. I think personally, from looking quite a lot into this, I think, and I'm obviously not a doctor, but I think it's quite clear that altering your consciousness in some ways can be a good way to explore your mind and to can have beneficial effects. That is essentially what you're trying to do with therapy, obviously not using substances. I think there's something very interesting here, and I think it's clear that it's been a political choice not to look into this kind of treatment. But I think it's also, as just echoing what's being said before, I think this is a generational thing. It's not something that's going to take 3 years. I think it's going to take 30 years. If you take my generation, I'm in my late 20s. I think our attitude towards cannabis, for example, is obviously different than our parents, but that has taken a long time, right? And I still have friends who will just vehemently deny that there can be any benefits or that cannabis can be consumed in a way that doesn't cause you problems. So I think it's interesting, but I think it's also feels far away from me.
I think that I read somewhere that like a designer drug, an illegal street drug, is a new compound is discovered almost weekly in Europe, about the US, you know, on the streets, and that's a big problem, right? And it's actually, you know, worse than allowing some of these things to be properly studied and made available in a controlled way, in my opinion, anyway. There's also been some interesting stuff. A guy called Professor Nutt, would you believe, used to be the head of the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs for the UK government up until about 2010. And he released a report saying that, a scientific report saying that, you know, laws should be relaxed and they should be analysed, so they fired him. But he's now started a company called Alcarel, which is a new compound which is supposed to replace alcohol, have similar effects, but without any of the downside. I know he's attempting to get that tested and get sort of FCA approval for that. So there's some interesting stuff going on, I think.
Cool. We'll move on to the next round, which is a game. So this is the second game. This is worth 10 points. Andrew, your chance to reclaim the lead or take the lead.
Right, I've got to understand the rules this time, because I didn't understand the rules last time, so I'll claim back.
So this one's a bit easier. This one's multiple choice. We've got a headline here with a blank. One of these three options below is the blank. I'll read it out. You guys write down your answer on your piece of paper, and when everyone's ready, just give a thumbs up, and then we'll show the answers to the screen. So this one is conspiracy theorists burn blank, claiming link to the virus, corona. So either A, picture of Bill Gates, B, Chinese restaurants, or C, 5G towers.
We're picking the correct one this time, yeah?
The correct one, exactly, yes. Two of them are incorrect and one is correct. Just give a thumbs up when you've got your answer written down, and then when everyone's ready, we'll show them to the screen. Cool, so show your answers. 5G, C, and Shahin, is that a C, a tiny C? A copyright sign. All right, 10 points for everyone. So it's 15 for Shahin, 15 for Victor, and 10 for Andrew. Andrew, we've got one more round for you to potentially eke out victory. So we'll move on to the next headline. This one here is, oh, sorry, this is the correct headline from the game. So it was in fact 5G towers. This actually happened in the UK, where Victor and Andrew, you two are. Basically, there was a belief amongst conspiracy theorists going around that it may have been 5G networks that were the cause of coronavirus, as silly as it sounds even to say. But these conspiracy theorists went out around and started something like 50 fires targeting cell towers around Britain last month, which led to 3 arrests. And then 16 other towers were torched in the Netherlands and throughout the EU. So quite crazy. Move on to the next headline. So this one is, Pearlii is a free, fast dental checkup using AI image processing. So this basically is a startup that allows you to take pictures of your own mouth, a series of photos as guided by their app, and they'll upload those photos and use machine learning to try to spot any common problems. The idea here is that it's a pain and a hassle for a lot of people to go and get a dentist checkup, even for those who do have dental insurance. A lot of the issues that crop up with your dental health are quite common and preventable. So the idea is that if we can make that checkup process much easier and catch some of those common things, we'll save people a lot of money and time and health in their mouth. So question to you all, can technology influence how we look after our health? Will things like this allow us to have better health, and will we end up going to the doctor, dentist, therapist more often with the use of an app?
I think yes, absolutely. I think we're already seeing a lot of interesting developments in using AI to do different kind of medical tasks. I don't know this product. Obviously, read the article. It seems to me like it's a good narrow use case potentially, where you can get a good data pipeline of dentists sort of tagging pictures and therefore improving the algorithms. I don't know if the output from a phone is good enough to decide on what's wrong or not wrong with your teeth. Obviously, when it's medical use cases, it's very sensitive to false positives and negatives. But I think this is definitely going to be a thing, right? I think there's no doubt about that. But I think again, things like regulation, for example, is really important when it's health issues, and that often moves a lot slower than the technology does. But I feel like this sounds like it's a good use case that's relatively narrow, and that can probably be aided by humans in the beginning to sort of train the algorithms and make sure that the output is correct. But I think I'll leave it up to a dentist to decide if you can actually, how much you can decipher from someone's smartphone picture, right? I mean, I don't know that.
It's an interesting point. As I was researching for this article, there's a competing startup called Pearl here in the US, which has raised way more money. And they actually use proper dental imagery as the input. So instead of you taking pictures at home with your phone, you instead upload your dental scans that your dentist has taken. Both looking for similar output, right? Identifying issues with your dental health. But there's something interesting there about the easiness of using your phone versus still having to go into a dentist and just getting better predictions with the dentist.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think these kinds of apps can be both very positive and very dangerous. In the dental example, in the Pearlii example specifically, sure, there are some diagnoses that can be done with a basic picture, but most of the dental issues that cause long-term problems are not visible, and they manifest after taking x-rays. And so I worry that this can create a false sense of comfort and may delay people from seeing the dentist when they actually should go and take images, where a lot of these issues, again, are likely not going to be visible. So a lot of cavities, for example, happen between teeth, and that won't be captured through this kind of image. And there's a lot of issues that are picked up again in the x-ray, which is why dentists are required to take x-rays and take actions on x-rays. And so long as the limitations of these apps are made very clear, I think it could be a net positive, but again, it should be reinforced that these apps should not replace guidelines that have been set forth after many years of public health research for folks to actually spend time with the healthcare professional. So it should be viewed as an augmentation and not a replacement.
I agree with a lot of that, and we're already seeing that. I mean, I think the market, the telemedicine market, is growing at 20% year on year amount growth. I think it's already 40-50 billion in the US. I think it's projected to be 3-4 times that possibly in the next few years. And the biggest thing, we've done a couple of digital and medtech investments, and the biggest thing that we've read and researched is the huge demand. The huge demand, over 80% of people want access via their mobile to telemedicine services. And so this, alongside someone reviewing it or being able to talk and having access for the sort of 40-50% of households, the poorer households that don't get an annual checkup each year, which is astonishingly high. I think this is fantastic, and I think we'll see the growth rapidly continue. But for sure, I mean, I actually tried the app out because I was curious, and it's pretty hard, not surprisingly, to take a photo of all the different parts of your mouth. Trying to stick a mobile phone in there. Yeah, on this particular app, I think this is a starting point to then provide consultations. It's fantastic, but I'm not sure I would trust it personally as a one-stop shop for my future dental health.
Did it give you any insights, Andrew, when you tried the app?
It said if you really want to know, it said one of my back teeth that actually it thought I did have a cavity. I mean, I went a couple of months back and the dentist said I was fine. But apart from that, I was all clear. So, but I'll still be going to the dentist again.
I think just a quick short note also, I think with these kind of things, with like AI image processing, I think there may be also more a feature than their product in themselves necessarily, of a larger sort of telemedicine app, right, where you assess if you should go to the dentist, for example. And so we keep it as being more kind of an assessment thing than a diagnosis thing. You know, lots of apps like Babylon Health and all these other apps, which maybe even start with kind of like a chatbot type of user interface. But if you can add in these things, which is just going to augment the data that a real human doctor then actually sees, that can probably speed up the process a lot, right?
That makes sense. We'll move on, guys. Cartoonist, you got something funny for us?
Yeah, this was a hard one, but let's see how I did. So this one's inspired by my dentist. I'm not sure if that's been your experience. And then the other one. That's it.
Good. Nice. Awesome. We will move on to the next headline. So next headline here is Travis Scott's Astronomical concert on Fortnite attracted more than 12 million people. So I actually watched 10 minutes of this earlier today. Super interesting, actually really fun. I play Fortnite from time to time, although I didn't bring my PlayStation down to Florida. But it was sad to see what I missed out on. So obviously with concerts not happening around the world, Travis Scott decided to have a virtual concert inside of Fortnite. This was in partnership with Fortnite and Epic. Fortnite actually did a similar concert last year with an artist called Marshmello. For the concert, Travis Scott used the entirety of the Fortnite island. Basically the whole thing turned into about a 15-minute concert, which is really cool. I highly recommend watching the YouTube video. And it was obviously very successful. So question to you all, what does the future of entertainment and content creation look like, and how do things like this play in?
I can go first maybe. So, you know, I've always been touting this idea since I was living inside of World of Warcraft for 3 years in my early teenage years, where my parents and, you know, the adults always say that you were being antisocial by sitting and playing these games all day. And there's an element to that, but in fact, what attracts people to computer games, and has always been since it went online, is a lot of the social aspect, I think. It's just, and I think we've talked about this before, generational shift. It's taken 15 years for that to become a mainstream thing, where Travis Scott, a mainstream hip hop rapper, does that. It's not just the weird geeks who play World of Warcraft, right? So I think we're going to see lots more of this. I think the next social media network is going to be about doing things together online, not just like looking at people's things online. I'm seeing it for myself, particularly in this lockdown. I'm from Denmark originally. I live in London. And I very rarely just pick up the phone and talk for 3 hours with an old buddy of mine, right? That's just not, I think maybe that's just me and my friends, but I think that's just not something that's like natural to me. But what we do is we play games together, right? So we can play Battlefield, or we can play Counter-Strike, or we can play Fortnite for 2 or 3 hours. And yes, we're playing the game, but really what we're doing is just hanging out, right? Because we're not physically together. And I think that's only going to accelerate. And I can't wait to see what the future is going to bring in terms of doing things together socially online. Because I think that's going to be a massive shift. And I don't think that has to do with AR and VR necessarily yet. I think that the kind of existing type of platforms that we have is going to facilitate that, like watching YouTube together, or playing computer games, or whatever creative activities or fun stuff you can do, Bitmojis and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the future is, I'd echo a lot of that. The future looks fantastic. And we can all sort of imagine the type of stuff that's going to happen. But I feel that the problem the core problem for true mass adoption is still that VR has not found its killer app. There are a bunch of niche applications, from training to, of course, computer games, but even online gaming or gaming networks are still only a fraction of the total sort of 90 billion sales in global games. Interestingly, the 12 million people, I think that's about the number of units that are due to be sold this year, or estimated to be sold this year in VR headsets. But we're still a long, long way away from sort of, Mark Zuckerberg's, wish of a billion units out there. So we're going to see a huge amount of experimentation, I think, and that's all very exciting. I think a lot of it is still going to hinge on games, because ultimately they're more addictive, right? They're all about mastery. They're about social proof from the point of view of beating others in competition. Games have unpredictability, and they reward you, right? They ultimately reward the limbic system when you achieve something. So I personally think VR has been the thing it's been next year. Since we business partner invested in Oculus many moons ago, VR has been about to arrive full blown next year, for every year for the last as many years as I can remember. So
Since the 70s.
Since the 70s. So this is a fantastic step forward. I think about 1% of Steam users have a headset, so it's a tiny fraction at the moment still. But it's exciting.
Shahin, what are your thoughts on the future of entertainment and content? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was talking to myself on mute here. So I think the transition to this type of interaction has been many, many decades in the making. When I was in elementary school, I would play adventure games, Sierra Online games, King's Quest, Space Quest, Police Quest, with my friends on the phone, trying to figure out those adventures. And I think that the type of interactions have been evolving over the past few decades, and COVID has just accelerated that trend. So I agree 100% with Victor that many interactions that required phone calls maybe 10, 15 years ago can now be done on text, can now be done inside these virtual worlds, and are far richer than what they would be on the phone, and perhaps even richer than what they would be if you were to sit down in a coffee shop. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was just giving the 30-second warning.
I think maybe just a quick note to add, which I find really fascinating, which is a recent development, is I think the sort of idea of virtual items and in some ways virtual fashion, right? Where like I have a cousin who is 8 years old, and they don't care so much about what t-shirt they're wearing, but they care a lot about which Fortnite dance they have, or like which skins you have in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, for example, right? And people, like for me, I'm too old to understand it. I don't understand why anyone would pay $10 to have a gun in Counter-Strike that looks different, even though I play a lot of Counter-Strike myself. But I don't get that, right? But for a young generation of people, that is how you kind of show your identities, how you kind of show your status, like you would have done with physical items in the past. I think for a lot of people, it feels really weird, especially for like the adults. But I think that's a really clear sign that we're just moving into like a digital economy and a place where you're moving to be much more than just a username online, right? Which was what it was when I was a kid.
Awesome, guys. We'll move on. Go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say my 8-year-old niece is absolutely obsessed with Minecraft, and it's a whole world I'm now too old to understand probably.
The nice thing about being older with disposable income is that we can afford all of these different skins and different dance moves in Fortnite and all of that. We'll move on, guys, to the last game. So this one here is worth 10 points. So this is going to be fill in the blank. We've got a headline here with the blank. 10 points for the right answer and 5 points for anything outrageously funny if you don't know the right answer. So living walls in Dallas to capture 1,600 pounds of blank annually. So again, just write down your answer and give a thumbs up when you've got it written down. And when everyone's ready, we'll just display it to the camera. Victor, you ready?
Ready?
Shahin, you come in with something outrageously funny?
Yes.
All right.
I like the confidence.
Okay, guys, let's see what you got. Bird
Mine says
feces,
embarrassment.
cannabis, and embarrassment. All right, I will give 10 points to, or sorry, 5 points for funny answer to bird feces, which gives Shahin the lead. So the correct answer is actually CO2. So this article is about Dallas installing one of the first living walls. So it's basically something like 40,000 plants that come together to make up this giant living wall that can capture something like 1,600 pounds of carbon dioxide per year and produce 1,200 pounds of oxygen. The city of Dallas has put in some pretty aggressive climate control goals because it's one of the more polluted cities in the US, especially with where it sits near the equator. It makes it harder to trap heat, makes it easier to trap heat, which makes it harder on the environment. This is an example of what the future of cities could start to look like. In one of the previous episodes, we talked about how some of the leading scientists say that it's not enough for us to actually reduce CO2 emissions. We're also going to have to figure out how to capture. And we've seen a lot of really cool technologies that have come out doing all kinds of crazy things with the capture, which we talked about last episode, and the four of us can talk about another time. But that's what this article was about. So with 20 points, Shahin is our winner today. One last time, this is where you can find everyone on Twitter. And then one last time, all the headlines we talked about today came from This Week in Creative Technology. Each week we send about 30 fun headlines ranging from emerging to current to future. If you want to sign up, that's just bit.ly/Future Fridays. Thanks so much for joining, guys. That was an awesome episode.
Thanks
Pleasure.
for having us. Loved it.